is advised.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Fat Nass Nerd Run-Throughs, and it is time for the discussion on Gloomhaven. Now, if you are paying attention at all to the channel, you know I'm doing a series on Gloomhaven. And don't worry, this does not mean I am done with the series, because normally, of course, after a game we do the discussion, or in this case, I will do the discussion. And for the case of a series, two things happen. One, we usually do a discussion at the end of the whole series to give you a full, feeling of the entire game as a whole. And recently we just started doing a mid-series discussion to kind of talk about the game and review it for all intents and purposes up until then. And that's also where we will decide if we're going to continue doing a series, the series or not. So this is kind of a mid-series and a full discussion on the game, because I probably should get a discussion up for this really quickly. But no, this does not mean I'm actually done playing Gloomhaven and recording it for you guys. That is not the case at all. I just feel like I've played enough of it now that I can give a full discussion and review of this game. And then I'll continue doing the series, just whenever I, get it to the table and actually get to recording and editing it. Anyway, just for clarification, now, oh boy, how to talk about Gloomhaven as a whole, because this is such a massive game. Like, this is the box. Like, this is like, whenever I first received this game in the box, I was like, oh, it must come with a bunch of extra stuff, like a Cool Mini or Not package with, nope, the whole box is this massive thing. And oh man, Gloomhaven is absolute, almost like near perfection. Like, I gotta say, Isaac Childress and Cephalofair Games like really hit one out of the park with Gloomhaven. It is absolutely fantastic. Okay, so if you don't know, Gloomhaven is basically like your epitome of D&D in a board game. Like, most games out there that are like dungeon crawls or whatever that do stuff like that do not do it anywhere near as well as Gloomhaven does. It is just this absolutely fantastic world that feels, even though it's like D&D and still fantasy, it still feels fresh, which is something that I admire about it, because when fantasy games come out, you're kind of like, oh, okay, you have your standard tropes, your ranger, your fighter, your healer, stuff like that. And Gloomhaven does have that, but they made their own creatures. They made their own world that's living and thriving, and it seems pretty much gloom. Like, everything is kind of dark with what's going on. Not a lot of good things have happened to me as of yet, but still does something innovative about it, and it's just fantastic. I love jumping into this game and playing it, and even though like all the extra like story stuff that, like, for example, D&D, the events that can happen in town or on the road and stuff, ultimately will always bring you to some sort of fight. D&D is pretty much a fight after fight after fight with a little bit of role-playing in the middle. For the most part, it doesn't always have to. Anyway, Gloomhaven does that as well, but yet makes you feel like you can roleplay your characters, even though you haven't really created them. You just kind of picked, oh, okay, well, I have the Brute, and he's your kind of glass cannon, and then there's the Spellweaver, which is your sorcerer who can just do a bunch of cool shit with the elements and stuff. And then you have your Tinkerer, you have your Mind Thief, and you just have these completely unique character classes that make everyone feel like a part of the team. Now, I am discussing this game as a solo player because I have not ever played Gloomhaven with other people, but I understand the concept of what you do. Ultimately, the reason why I play it solo is because since this game is so huge and there's so much to it, to do a series would become extremely difficult to try and get them to continue doing it. Now, I'm sure Devin or Kat would actually love this game and be more than willing to, but even if that's the case, me playing solo, I'm able to pump out the videos quicker, because I can say, hey, I can sit down one day and do 3 games if I want to. Anyway, so as a solo experience, well, okay, there's a lot to talk about. Anyway, I'm going to keep talking about how this game is amazing. Well, with Gloomhaven, like, with the new and fresh ideas, you still have to understand that it is a dungeon crawl. That's really all it is. But they do something different about the dungeon crawl mechanic and you know, atmosphere that other games like Massive Darkness or Sword and Sorcery, or to name a few that came out, you know, around the same time, that makes, in my opinion, this one, like, here, and Massive Darkness is kind of here, and Sword and Sorcery is in the fucking trash. With Gloomhaven, it all boils down to how you play your character. So, whenever you have your character, they have this amazing mechanism of they have their own deck of cards, and they will always ever have, to my knowledge, forever, the same number of cards. Not the same type, but the same number. So the Spellweaver, if you don't know her name, Safra, has 8 cards in her deck, the entire scenario. Then you have Yargo, which is my Brute, who has 10. And then I believe there's another one that can have 12. They will always ever have these cards, and it's you know, action selection and hand management and abilities. It's so cool. It's my favorite part, honestly, probably about Gloomhaven. Anyway, so what you do is every single turn, you have to play 2 cards, and each card has 2 abilities on it. Or if you don't want to do those abilities, the top one can be used just for a standard attack 2, and the bottom one can be used for a standard move 2. So, you have, each turn you have to play 2 of these, and then on each of them has an initiative number, and whenever you play it, you get to choose which one you want to do. It's like, oh, I didn't know you wanted to go first. Okay, well, I have a really low one, but I have a high one, so I'll go later. So whenever you pick these 2 cards, all the enemies have their own deck as well. They have their own behavior, their own, you know, actions, their own, you know, ways to, like, completely screw you over, that they also have an initiative. So once you pick your 2 cards, everyone has picked their 2, face down, you'll flip over which enemies, they'll flip over theirs, they have an initiative number, and what they'll do, and then you just basically go in lowest number first. So, once it gets to you, you actually get to see kind of like, unless you're going first, you'd be like, yes, I'm going first, I'm going to do this, like I wanted to do. But, here's the great thing, is you don't have to announce, okay, I'm doing the top one of this one and the bottom one of this one, because you can only ever do the top of one card and the bottom of another. You cannot do 2 tops. And this brings up very interesting choices and you know, experiences whenever you are playing just even one scenario. You're like, okay, well, this is a really good combination. This is why I have it in my deck, and it's not really a deck. You have them all in your hand. It's not like you're drawing a few. So you have all your options available to you, and you get weaker over time. Anyway, so if like a wolf or whatever is going first, and he comes up and goes a completely different way than you expected, you're like, okay, crap, how do I want to do that? Okay, well, I was going to do this top one and this bottom one, now I'm going to reverse it, and it's still going to work. So you have a bunch of flexibility even with playing 2 cards. But, as with any game, really, things can happen that can be like, oh man, I didn't know they were going to immobilize me, and so, great, now I can't do anything, or I can't move, and I was really hoping to move so I can use this really powerful card. But okay, well, since I can't move, I guess I'll just, you know, just the possibilities are just amazing. And just having that flexibility of being able to, you know, kind of change a little bit of what you wanted to do is a brilliant idea. I don't know how any other game hasn't done this, but it is fantastic. Being able to, and play games with other players, it's like, you can't really talk about what you're wanting to do. You can be like, okay, well, I want to, like, you know, or you can't really talk about exactly what's in your hand. Oh, I have an overwhelming attack of 6 damage. I'm gonna go. You can't do that. You have to be like, well, I'm really hoping to just run up to that skeleton and really hit him really hard. So if you can focus on someone else, and so whenever initiative comes up, you really kind of have to loosely work together, because you also all have your own, not really secret objective, but still an objective to be like, okay, well, I need to open a door this turn, but you can't really tell anyone that because you're trying to get, you know, perks, check marks. These are ways to kind of thin out your modifier deck, and oh my god, there's just so much to this. But that hand management, and over time, so you'll discard those 2, or if you have a really powerful card, it'll go into a lost pile, which means it's out of the game or out of the scenario the entire time. And So over time, your hands can be shorter and shorter, and at the end you can make a short rest, which means all those discarded cards you'll shuffle and get rid of one for the rest of the scenario and get. So as you're playing, you really have to be smart about which cards you want to use and which ones that you can hope that get discarded. Or on your turn, you can just take a long rest, and which is initiative 99, so you're going last, but you get to choose which card from your discard pile goes away. And this is such a brilliant idea that your characters are not invincible. You can't go into this in a scenario in a dungeon and fight for hours and hours on end, and you're still just super powerful, just chucking fireballs or swinging this massive sword and just killing and slaughtering a bunch of people, but also taking hits and being like, oh, I'm still fine. No, your characters will get tired, and that's what it is. Like when your deck, whenever you cannot play 2 cards because you have no more to do a short or long rest, and if you only have 1 card in hand forever, then your character's exhausted and they're actually out of the scenario. That doesn't mean everyone loses, because it goes until everyone cannot, or the scenario is, the goal is unbeatable or unachievable. That's whenever you lose. And this is such a smart and thematic idea because the scenarios are perfect. You may say 8 cards, what the hell? So you only can do 4 actions? Absolutely not, because whenever you play 2, like each time, you're going to be like, okay, well, I'm going to take a short rest. Now 1's gone, so now you get 7 back. And then you just keep going, and like each scenario lasts probably about an hour, and they're not like massive worlds, and then you kind of have to be smart about what you want to do. Like my Spellweaver is the one that has 8 cards, and it's not like she's out after 4 turns. And most attacks, especially whenever you tie it with other people, can like do a bunch of damage and like wipe out a few enemies, and you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to go and do this while you take care of them. And oh man, there's just so many cool things that you do with these cards. Like if you take damage, like if you took 100 damage somehow, like this is completely like hopefully impossible. The most damage I think has been coming towards me is like 7, which is a lot of damage because that would completely, if your health ever goes all the way down too, your character leaves. The Spellweaver, her health is only 7. So what you can do, if someone was going to deal 7 damage to her and you don't have any shields or any items to use, you can take a card from your hand and just discard it. Not lost, but discard it, and you take no damage, which is amazing. But that's a card that you definitely need, because then you're going to have to shuffle those eventually and discard one. So, like, you kind of have to pick and choose on which damage you want to take. Be like, okay, yeah, I can take 2 damage, that's fine. With her, that put her down to 5. My Brute has 12 now, so 2 would put him down to 10. Like, you're not doing wicked amount of damage, and you're not taking a bunch all the time. It's just like, okay, well, here's 2 damage, here's 1, and you can heal each other, or if you take a long rest, you can heal 2. So just the fact that pretty much everything you want to do in this entire game is revolved around your deck of cards, which is amazing. Because when you level up, your characters level up in this entire scenario, and you feel like you leveled up. Because your cards that you play will also give you experience throughout the scenario. On top of, if you win, you get a bonus experience. Like, then what you do is when you level up, that gives you an option to get, like, if you go to level 3, you have like 2 or 3 level 3 cards that you can choose and pick from and be like, oh, these are really powerful. And what you'll do is you don't add them to your deck of, like, with her with 8 cards. You still have to pick and choose what you're taking out. She will only ever have 8, so it's like, whenever you're leveling up, it's like, okay, well, which one of these is my weakest? I'm level 2 right now, and I still have my level 1 cards. Like, I didn't immediately take all level 2s and put them in, because I don't feel like I need to. But what you can always do is you can be like, okay, well, how has the games been going on? What has been coming up a little bit more? And you can alter and be like, oh, well, okay, this level 2 seems really powerful now that things are happening. It's like, okay, well, I haven't really used this card a whole lot, so I'm going to take that one out and put this one in. When level 3, same thing, be like, okay, some of them I'm hoping are like kind of like the same cards, but just higher levels, and be like, oh, okay, I'm going to put this stronger attack in and move in. And, oh man, just the balance of moving and attacking is amazing. I mean, my friend, when he played it, he didn't like that. I don't understand how. Like, the crux of this game is so smart and so elegant that to be like, oh, you're tired, so it's like, yes, like you have to be smart with how you play your character. You don't. It's not like you lose if one person leaves. Like I've had in a few scenarios with Spellweaver, by the very end, like it's not like she crapped out halfway through or even at the beginning. By the very end, after she helped a little bit, she got tired and she was gone. But the brute was still ready to go and keep fighting, and she had helped enough to let Yargo, which is the brute's name, finish off the enemies and still be like, and we're still good. Now, on top of all this, they do something else. Like there's no dice in this game, which I really do like, because with dungeon crawls, dice are okay, but I think it would have hurt this game a lot. What they did was they gave each character an attack modifier deck, and the enemies. And what they all come out kind of the same at the very beginning of the game, like, and these are what will determine if, like, how much damage you do, and for each attack. So each attack you do, if you're attacking 3 different people, you draw the top card off the top of your own modifier deck, and then apply that. So some of them are +0s, and it's like, okay, well, you know, I was dealing 3 damage, so +0, so still 3 damage to them. Some of them are minuses. There's like a few -1s, so now instead of 3, you're doing 2. And I think, well, there's 1 -2, then there's a bunch of +1s, and then a +2, and a ×2, which is like a critical hit, which is always amazing. You're like, okay, I guess I'll do 3 damage. Or what's really awesome with the overwhelming assault with the brute is if he's doing his 6 damage and you happen to get your ×2, it's 12 damage going towards them. It's just like, oh, okay. Like, I kid you not, I had a time where I was running up against an earth demon who had 12 hit points, no shields, and I ran up with my overwhelming assault and drew my ×2 and just wiped him. Like, and he's dead, and you're like, okay. And so, and there's also a miss, which is like, there's only 1 miss. But every attack is crucial because you're on a timer with your hand. So it's like, okay, I need to do this attack. I only have like 2 left. All right. So I'm gonna, oh no. It's like, fuck, I got my miss. And it's like, it's so brutal. But there's only 1 in your entire deck. Now, that's awesome. Because anytime you get your ×2 or your miss, you shuffle it up. So it's not like a ×2 is a one-time use. They come back. Well, what makes these even more awesome is because as you level up or as you complete those secret objectives, they give you perk check marks. And once you get 3 of those, you get to look on your own character sheet tree and pick one. And some of them are like replace 2 -1 cards with +1 cards in your deck, or replace 3 -1s with +0s. So you start creating, and now you feel like you're leveling up because you're not missing as much, or you're not doing less damage. So you start feeling more powerful, and you can. Each character has their own unique cards that add like conditions. Like, okay, well, I'm gonna do a lot of stuns, and these have like permanent, like, keep drawing effects. I can't remember what it's called, but if you happen to draw this, it'll have an arrow, which means you draw another card. And I feel like by the time you get to like the end, you're just like, okay, I'm gonna attack that person. Oh, I'm drawing again. Oh, he's stunned, wounded, +3, +5, and there's a bunch of extra stuff that you're like, okay, well, he's messed up, and it's amazing. I don't think there's anything in there that gets rid of the miss, but because there's always still that chance. But it makes you feel like whenever you play like other dungeon crawls or other games, and you're like, what? How can I miss? Because with board games and even like tabletop RPGs, and you see the guy in front of you, and you see your character like as standees or as miniatures, and you're like, how did I miss? Well, unfortunately, you don't get to see the option of them ducking. They're not just standing there like freaking what do they call them? Like Final Fantasy fighting turn-based combat, where they're not like, okay, I'm gonna stand here. Yes, you hit me, and then your turn, and I'm gonna hit you, and then you hit me. And no, they're like, we don't really get to see the visuals of like a wolf trying to run around you, or a cultist like not trying to get hit by a massive sword or a fireball. they're still, so there's always that chance of missing. Or if you get a -1, you're like, but how is this less damage? If I should always be able to, it's like, well, they have ways, like they could have moved and you nicked them, or they had a shield and they kind of grazed the shield, but you still got them a little bit. It's absolutely fantastic. Like, the leveling up feels like you're leveling up. All the XP you get from doing all your cards, and you're like, oh, well, yeah, that's more XP plus the bonus, feels like it's rewarding. You get to sit there and be like, oh, I did all this awesome stuff in this scenario, and I still get the same 5. You know, it's like, it feels like a tabletop RPG, where the DM, in this case the game, is like, yeah, you guys did a lot of extra stuff. Here's extra XP that I was normally going to give you 5 XP, but you know, you guys did a lot of cool things in combat. You role played really well, so here's an extra 5. You're getting 10 now, or something. So just those in and of itself make Gloomhaven like amazing. And let's see. So on top of that, with the combat, you have your outside like elements where, yes, each scenario, like the scenario booklet, I think is like 95 scenarios. I have done, I think, 6 of them. But what's really cool is it doesn't just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It has like certain things will tie in together. So like whenever you're doing certain scenarios, excuse me, when you're doing certain scenarios, you have like you're following the story, and it has like an introduction that you read, which is sometimes humorous and really, really well written. That after you're done with that, some of them will have, okay, once you get to this spot, now read this, and this is going to give you some more story of what's going on. And it'll kind of change up the scenario a little bit. Then you'll have a conclusion, which will tie you into, some of them will give you more like open world, you know, elements. It'll be like, okay, well, now you can go here, 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 and here. And you have a sideboard, because the scenarios are modular boards, which are, so far, all of them have been unique. Not like the best visually looking, like they're kind of, it's just, there's a lot of brown and stuff, but I think it's okay enough. Like, I do kind of wish that the boards were a little bit more, I wouldn't want to say busy, but kind of vibrant. Like, I don't want it to just look at like a square brown, you know, brown board. It'd be nice to have a little bit more elements, but they do come with, you know, tokens that you put on, which are obstacles that you can't move past, but you have cards that say jump, which means you can jump over obstacles, and other stuff like that. So, whenever you are, what was I going with? Oh yeah, so whenever you finish a scenario, some of them are linked together, and then they say, okay, well now put on, you know, the separate board, which is just a map board that comes with your global achievements and your prosperity, which is kind of how Gloomhaven is. Like, you know, is because you can completely shit on it and be like, okay, well, I don't really care about Gloomhaven, or you can try and build it up, which will help you when you bring in new characters. They come out at higher levels, and then other things will go with that. But all this board is a place to put stickers. Like, it's a map that you get to look at and be like, and you can, they did something really awesome that each sticker you have is like, okay, I've done that, and you'll mark it. And then one of my favorites is that where you put the sticker, some of them will have like details and markings that will actually overlap correctly with that spot, so it feels like it belongs on the map. And any one of those are fair game for you to go to if you meet the requirements. Some of them will say, okay, you have this to go to, but you need this certain achievement or this certain, you know, enhancement. It's like, well, okay, I don't have that, so I guess I can't do that right now. And then later on, you can come back to it. Throughout the game, you can find, you know, side scenarios that really don't have to go do them, but it's a bonus thing that you can just be like, okay, yeah, well, you know, we'll put that on the back burner. I'm not really interested in going and attacking, you know, this person or raiding this village. I think I'll go to this volcano place. Let's see what that's about. And you have an encounter there that could, you know, increase your character's like level or get you some cool items that you normally wouldn't get if you didn't go do that. I still have yet to do those because I'm engrossed in what's going on. But they do such a good job at having this campaign connect through the scenarios. Like it's not just like you walk up to this building and then now enemies attack you. No, there's people that you'll talk to, and then they'll give you a reason to, go and do the scenario and finish the goal, then you'll have a conclusion which will tie into the next ones that you do, and then that's how they tell the story. It's such a fantastic story that I'm curious as to if I made certain decisions that if it would have gone a different way, because there was a point where you could have done A, which would have probably done something beneficial, which you could have role-played it out, or B, you could have done like a completely other thing. And in my run-through, I went and did B, and now I'm on this path, and I'm like, what have I done? But there are reasons why, because I'm trying to roleplay my characters since I'm playing solo, trying to roleplay why they would do certain things and where they went and how they would, react, because I mentioned that these scenarios link to each other, and what you do is after each scenario you have a chance to go back to Gloomhaven, which is where you can go spend your coins and level up and do all this stuff. Well, what you can also do is there's like a deck of city events. You can do one city event each time you go to Gloomhaven, and that is like another role-playing thing. That's kind of your in between and like D&D, where things you just go to a town and people talk to you. So it's like you run across one of the cards is there's a bar fight. You can talk about, you could have A, join in on the bar fight, or B, leave or whatever, and you can choose and role-play what would your characters do. And then you flip it over, and depending on certain, events or conditions that you meet, you can do this one. But some of them are like, if you have to have a certain party member, and you're like, well, I don't have him, so you can't do it, so you have to go to the other option. And it's so much fun. It's so cool, because they didn't have to do that. They could have just made this your standard scenario dungeon crawl, and you just go from scenario to scenario. But no, you have a vibrant world that you can go to. That ultimately will affect your reputation or lower your reputation, or make you stronger or weaker in the following scenario. And it's really awesome. So like I said, you can have city events, which also where there's events is that if you go to Gloomhaven and then you go out to do one of your scenarios, you have to do a road event, which is the same deck of cards, but it's road events, and you draw those, and that will be good or bad for you, and you can roleplay that as well. And then that might give you something. It might allow you to go and do it might benefit you in the following scenario just as much. Those even though they're not like a huge thing within the game, the fact that they're there and they're worth reading and worth doing is so much fun. I look forward to doing these events like each time, because they're thematic. They make sense to the game that you're playing, and they're not like bogging you down by being like, oh, we have to go do all of this before we can go fight. And nope, you're just like, card, this is what happens to us while we're in the city. Okay. And then so that's like going to Gloomhaven. And then there's other extra stuff, like you can donate money to try and open, because the game comes with a bunch of envelopes that you can only ever open, I think either 4 or 6 of them at the beginning, and they have extra ones. Not envelopes, but boxes. And I don't know what's in them, but I know there's one that I get to open, or an envelope or something I get to open, that if I donate 100 coins to I think it's the monastery, I've donated 20. And what's really cool, I did mention that you don't really get to create your characters, but you kind of do. So at the beginning when you're doing characters, or even whenever your characters retire, which is what I'm about to get to, is they have like an overall goal that is like a very long-term goal that they will have for that character. And they'll tell you a little bit of their backstory, that, okay, well, like Sophra's is she wants to find a cure, which actually really tied into the Spellweaver's character. And then the Brute, Yargo, he wants to kill every type of elemental demon. And I've done 3. I've done the Frost, the Earth, and the Wind. And there is Fire, Sun, Night. Is there 6? There might be 6. There might be 8, but I can't remember the other ones. And so once you complete these objectives, then your character retires. Like, he's actually done for the entire, like, you cannot bring, as far as I know, I need to reread the retirement, because I'm not really anywhere close, especially with Safra, not anywhere close to what she, what her objective is, but I'm at least halfway, or I've done 3 things for Yargos, and once he's done, once he completes that, then, you know, you open a certain box, and then it tells you what to read and stuff like that, and then now he's gone, like, he's complete. He took him years, or he completed his objective, and now he's done. And he's like, I can't do this anymore. I've done what I needed to do, and, you know, I gotta say farewell. And it's like, I don't want you to go. So whenever you're playing, you get to make these, you know, decisions. If you want to roleplay your character, would he go and kill, like, I could have not had him kill any of them. I could have had Soffer kill all of them, and he's just like, oh, okay. But it's like, well, if that's his goal, then he's going to go out of his way to make it happen. So it's really up to you as the player to how you know, adamant you want to be about those cards. But I think that this game would kind of almost be lacking if you weren't going to at least try and achieve it. I don't, and then, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not like if you're playing with 5 people and the person who's playing the one retires, it's not like you can't play anymore. Like, I think their character gets replaced, and then you can play someone else now. But like I said, there's a bunch of different characters that you don't even get at the beginning. So it's oh man, so it's just absolutely a blast. Now, speaking of, there are a few things that are not, like, I don't hate them, and I wouldn't really say I don't like them, but they're kind of annoying. And this probably is my number one is probably the fact that there's a lot to this game, and luckily I've had some fantastic people who will comment and basically really long comments, like detailing out, you know, in numerical order, like, one, well, you know, in this rule it says this, and this rule it says this, and you did this at this point to and so it's amazing. It's helped a lot. And I'm hoping I'm retaining, since this is a series. I'd hate to keep making the same mistake twice. But there's a lot to this game. Like, there's a QR scanner on the rulebook that you can watch a video, but that he doesn't really go through a whole lot of it. And like, ultimately, like, your turn is pretty simple. Pick 2 cards and do that. But as with really any RPG or any, you know, dungeon crawl, there's a lot of finicky little rules that one person trying to control 2 people is kind of difficult to do. Like, there's times where I'll even forget, because the monsters also have an attack modifier deck. I don't know if I mentioned that they same possibility, except they don't really get, like, bonus cards in theirs. Theirs will be so they have the standard modifier deck that will so they have a chance to miss and double and all that. But, like, sometimes I'll forget to draw for them. And I mean, that seems pretty basic, but I'm trying to figure out, okay, well, my 2 characters doing this, they're all doing this, so that's what I need to focus on. Okay, well, I'm really excited to attack, so I'm like, I'm going to attack them, I'm hitting them 3 times, okay, cool, that's this much damage, and I'll be like, I'll forget that each attack you do is a separate modifier card, so it's like, you can whiff on the first one, and then the second attack you can double, and then the third attack you can get like a +1 or something. And I'll forget to do that. Like, sometimes I'll be like, oh, okay, well, here's just the one for the whole attack. And it's like, no, you're attacking more people. Each one of those gets their own modifier. And I know I've forgotten to do that. I know I've forgotten to take traps off, because the traps triggered, they go away. I know I had consumables, which are potions, or anything with like an X, it gets, you know, flipped over. And it's like, I thought, you know, potions, you're normally like, in really any other game, you use it and it's gone. Nope, that's not the case. It just gets flipped over and it refreshes the next scenario. So I actually just brought those back. The way enemies move and stuff like that is just, sometimes it's a little bit confusing, because they have something what's called a focus, which means that they'll pretty much go after whoever they can hit, like, if they'll, you know, hit. And then, like, one of them, like the archers, for example, their attack cards don't have, you know, a range, and so you're like, okay, I guess they're not range attacking, but they are, and so there's just a bunch of stuff that, like, one person is trying to retain and do and memorize it all. But ultimately, like, I'm super appreciative of the people who have commented on the videos, like, pointing out the mistakes that I've made in not a big douchebag way. They're just like, yeah, no, we made the same mistake, and this is actually the rule of this. And I've actually helped one of them before, because you have bosses in this game, which are awesome. So it's just like, they have their own boss deck and their own abilities, and like, they fight a completely different way. And they feel like a boss that you have to be smart and work around and, like, not get hit, but they do a bunch of damage. But they can also, what sucks about them is they have, like, invulnerabilities to certain conditions, like, so they can't be poisoned or disarmed or immobilized. And so you're like, crap, that's all I do is poison, and immobilize and then disarm. Those are all my attacks, so crap, this is going to be really difficult. But you try and work around it. But it's funny because those symbols, that just shows what they can't be affected by. And someone commented and they thought that that's what they did every attack. And I'm like, oh god, am I wrong again? I was really terrified that, like, they were, because that'd be broken as hell. So luckily with their comments, and I probably need to go down and actually write down their notes just so I can make sure whenever I'm playing that I can be like, okay, well, let's double check this. But the rulebook is pretty good. They have an index on the back, not really a player guide because it doesn't really require one, but it's like conditions. And you're like, page 8, you're like, oh, okay. And so you just go to page 8 and they're all right there. Or, you know, one-armed attack, and like each one has like a page number to it, so it's pretty quick to find. Ultimately, the game is not really that difficult to learn. This is like over a couple playthroughs. You're most likely, not most likely, you're gonna make mistakes, but as long as you're, because luckily if you're playing, you're not gonna be like, what, this doesn't make any sense. You can still overcome like a rule groove and kind of just go with the flow, which is what I've done. But sometimes you may forget to put cards in the lost pile, and then you'll draw them again and be like, okay, and then you'll keep playing them. And you'll be like, oh crap, this is supposed to go over there. It's fine because the game for me has never felt too easy because of that timer. Like, even if I was going and blowing through all the enemies, it's like, well, I'm still using the same cards, and like, just because I'm killing them quicker doesn't mean that like I'm not using as much cards. So that's more of an annoyance because it's just me. Like, playing the game and controlling 2 characters is kind of difficult. Also, like, since I am playing 2 characters, that's not really the ideal way to play. I've never been a huge fan of that vague, like, information you can give each other. Like, time stories, for example, that was what that was all about. And I think I would do it if I wasn't recording. Like, if you've ever seen my time stories run-throughs, you'll know that we just take the card and we read it out loud to each other, more for the fact that because we play for you guys. And so it's the same with Gloomhaven. Like, since I know full information, I'm not like kind of like, oh, like looking, I mean, you know what both of you are going to do, because the whole point when you're playing with other people is you don't really know what everyone is going to do on their turn. You can kind of help each other out and vaguely say what you're wanting to do, but you can't ever be for certain. You can't really be certain what their little objective card is either. But I'm not really a huge fan of that, but I think that comes, once again, down to the point where, since I record these videos, it wouldn't be fun for you guys if I didn't talk about it. So there's a kind of explanation of that. But I do understand that if I was just playing this for, you know, recreational stuff, then it would be fun because you'd be more into the role playing of that. You kind of get into your character and talk, you know, as they would talk. You're not going to be sitting there in the middle of a battle. Okay, well, I'm going to move 2 spaces, and then I'm going to attack that one, and then I'm going to use this. You wouldn't do that, so you kind of have to be in the moment. So it's okay. But the way they compensate for that in solo play is that because the scenarios will be level based, so as it's the average of your characters divided by 2. So since both my characters are level 2, the average is 2 divided by and then it's halved, so each scenario right now is still level 1, even though both my characters are level 2. I went over that multiple times. I was like, well, that doesn't seem right if they're both level 2. And then you have, so whenever you're playing solo, what happens is monsters will have levels, which is really, really cool. So how monsters work and how enemies work is they come in a sleeve, and the monsters have one side, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if you've ever seen Civilization, the board game, it was kind of like those things. It's a square card with like different levels, and that's their attributes. And then so they have 4 of those, and you just rotate it. So level 1's on top, you rotate it 2, 3, and then 4, and on the back it goes 5, 6, 7, 8. Anyway, and they come in a sleeve. So if they're level 1, you put level 1 on top and you slide it in, and it only shows level 1. And in that sleeve are different numbers, like 1 through 5, for example. Because on each miniature, or each standee has a number on it. And so that's how you look. Okay, number 1's here. It took 5 damage. You take a 5 damage and you put it on the 1 slot on their card. So it's just a very neat way to organize your enemies, and you put their decks nearby, so it's not like, okay, there's 5 cards, and it's just all concise into 1 card. You get to look at it, look at the tokens, and be like, oh yeah, number 1's about to die. Number 4 is stunned, and number 3 has 2 damage, and number 6 has not been hit. It's just very quick to look around the board and see exactly. You don't have to have the tokens next to number 1, and when they move, you have to do some dumbass thing and like, oh crap, oh, well, let me just put them under there, and then it's stupid. Like, it's just all off to the side. The board's clean, the board's free, and everything's over there. It's amazing. It's super smart. But when you're playing solo, the monsters go up a level, and then trap damage is just a regular, damage. If you go into and you land on it, or it triggers or whatever, then that does more damage in solo. So I think that's fine ultimately, because I really don't know how else they could have done a solo mode. Even though I know they have solo scenarios for Gloomhaven, I don't have those. I want them, because I probably would have done those instead for the series. But I am having an absolute blast doing I plan, well, I don't know if I want to go until they retire and they're both done, or if I want to go until the whole thing's done. I'll probably just keep going until the whole thing's done, which is why I'm doing this discussion right now. Let's see, what else don't I like? So I don't really care for how conditions are applied. I love the conditions. Like, they're simple, they make sense, and there's ways to get, and there's ways to get around them, and it's not like groundbreaking, but they're just, or like game breaking, but they're just as, important. If you're poisoned, it sucks, but it's not like, well, the game's over. If you're immobilized, it sucks, but it's not, they're temporary. But what I don't really understand, I'm trying to even make it thematic, but even if I'm dealing an attack that stuns you, it's going to stun you. Like, once you see that symbol, that's happening. There's no way to get around, unless they don't actually physically hit you. But if they hit you, regardless of if they do damage or not, you get that condition. And that's actually, I lied about me having to know a lot, or all the rules. My number 1 complaint about this game is the fact that you will get a condition 99% of the time. It's like, so it's like, if I hit you and deal no damage to you, you're still stunned, or you're still immobilized. And I don't really like that at all, actually, because it doesn't thematically make sense to me. Like, I don't know. It's like, the last time I got immobilized, it kind of made sense because it was from a hound. And it's like, okay, well, maybe he's, like, biting, like, my ankle, but I have, like, a greave there, and he has my clothes. And so it's like, I can't really move, because he's like holding it, and so I can't really, like, get away from him. It's kind of a stretch, but it's like, come on, like, the poison is like, how did I still get poisoned if you dealt no damage to me? Like, it's like, someone tried to explain it like, well, it broke the skin, but the poison still seeped in. It's like, but I meant it would have done damage. Like, like, it's not like if, like, someone's knife that has poison on it hits my chest plate and it, like, chinks off, and it's like, oh no, the poison! I really don't like it. I mean, once again, it's not game-breaking. I'm not sitting there like, this is so fucking stupid, and I quit playing. It's just kind of like, I got over it, but it's still my biggest complaint, and even if that's my biggest complaint, and I'm like, I got over it, it's not that big of a complaint, I guess. Let's see, what else? They did something else in here, which is almost like, it's not a complaint, but it's not something that I'm really going to rave about either, because it hardly ever comes into play. And maybe it will later on. It came into play actually more recently than normal, but they have elements that I've mentioned before. The Spellweaver, a lot of her attacks will be boosted by these elements, but they have, you know, earth, wind, fire, water, ice, dark, and light, I think are they. And anytime you play a card and it has that symbol, it moves up to, like, active or whatever. Like, oh, it's all prominent. The fire is in the air, and it's like, I'm feeling fire, or like I'm feeling the light from around me. And whenever you play, you know, another card, and it has, like, it's like, oh, you can spend light, or you can spend this certain element, or sometimes it's like spend any of them, to get a little extra damage, or an experience point, or whatever. And you look over, and you can be like, okay, so if I play this card, and it brings in wind, so wind will jump all the way up, and then another person plays a card, and it says they can spend wind, they can spend it to boost their attack. So that's cool. But the problem is, I cannot play two of my cards. One of them, the top one, puts wind up, and the bottom one uses it. You cannot, the same character cannot bring in an element and use it the same turn. A character can bring in an element, and another character can use that element in the same turn, but not the same. And because this is the case, so what happens is they're all gone, whatever, I can't remember the words. They're all, like, not in the air. Once you play a card, it moves all the way up to 2 spaces, and then if it's not spent at the end of the turn, they go down to waning. So essentially they're around for 2 turns. As of right now, they hardly ever get used. Like, so it's kind of like, why have it there if it's not going to be as prominent? But I think because there's not, like, a bunch of high damage, you know, I think the highest enemy I've fought had, I think with it not counting bosses, would be like 12 damage or something. So, like, if I was to do a big attack for 3 or 4 damage and then be able to constantly spend the elements, it probably would make it easier. So I like it. And I'm sure I'm going to continue, it's going to grow on me more as I start getting more, you know, modifier cards in my Spellweaver's deck that will bring in those elements a lot, or my cards will utilize them a lot more. Then I think it's going to be amazing. But as of right now, it's just kind of like, alright, yeah, that's there. And that's something I'll always forget. I'm like, just like, oh yeah, so that's up, and then I'll be playing, and then I'll be like, oh wait, that should be gone right now. So it was pretty cool. Some of the monsters actually would bring them in, and it's like, oh, you just fucked up, boy, because now I'm going to use your ice to screw. But then they work together. Like, some of their modifier cards, where it's like, there was one where the freaking stupid, oh, what was it? The living spirit brought in an ice, and then the frost demon used it, and I was like, because they kind of work together. I don't know if I mentioned it, but each monster has its own behavior deck, which is like a pain in the ass. Each boss is unique per the scenario they come in, and they have like their deck. All bosses use the same boss deck, but they have basically like attack 1 and attack 2, and you'll look in the scenario booklet, and it's like, oh, attack 1 is this. Oh, attack 1 is kill all characters. Cool, cool. That's pretty neat. And so they've done such a good job making all enemies and stuff feel unique and awesome. They've done such a good job about making you feel unique as a character and important into the team, where it's not like, oh, okay, why don't we just send the Brute in and kill everyone because we're useless. No. If the Brute goes in by himself, he's going to die. Like, he can't just run in and he's a glass tank. He does a lot of damage, but I mean, so does everyone else whenever they gang up on him, and he can still miss just like anyone else. Another thing that I hardly ever talk the artwork. There's not a whole bunch of artwork, but for the creatures, the art design is amazing and innovative, and I've never. I mean, obviously an archer is an archer, but like I've never seen a creature like that. I've never seen a creature like that, or like just this artwork is amazing. I wish it was used more, like I said, on the tiles, and maybe on the cards. But the items are really cool, and they come in, you know, different. You don't have just a huge stack. You can just buy them, and it's like. But gold's super hard to come by too. Oh man, that's another thing. A thing I do really like is you're not just hounded. You're just not just like swimming in cash. You have to like cherish everything you get because it's almost bittersweet. Whenever you kill an enemy, you remove them and you place a coin on their spot. And it's not like one coin. Depending on the level of the scenario, they'll be worth. Each token will be worth like 2 or 3. So if you get 4 of them, you got like 8 coins that you can use. Well, you don't just get those. It's not like if you kill one, you get it. It stays in that spot, and each character has a loot card that is also like useful with its other abilities. So you have to make a conscious decision of, no, I'm not going to go kill that monster right now because there's a bunch of coins around me, and I want to pick those up. But you don't share coins between parties, so it's like, okay, well, you have no money. But I happen to be around all the coins. Do we finagle it to where you can come and pick it up? Or do I just grab it all right now? So you have to work as a team. And things cost a lot of money. Like when you lose, when you spend or lose or whatever 5 coins, like you feel it. And that could be early on. Later on it could just be like, oh, I guess I'll buy that thing for 300 coins. Why not? I have 1,000,000. But right now it's coins. It's like, okay, well that thing's worth 50. I have to save up for that, but I really want it, and so I guess I will. Because what's really cool is you don't have to keep buying potions, which I found out. Like consumables are just they're consumed in that scenario and come back, so it's not like you have to keep buying health potions or whatever. So that I thought was interesting because it's a different element of not like, oh, you just have a bunch of money and a bunch of items. You don't. You have to build your character and be smart about it. Another thing that I hardly ever talk about is what I love is each scenario is not that long. Like, at least solo, with 2 characters, I've usually been able to complete a scenario in about an hour, maybe in an hour and a half, if I've lost. And I've only lost once so far. Technically, I didn't even lose. I knew I was going to. And it wasn't through luck. It was my own dumb decisions. And I was like, well, didn't think this through, so I'm just going to start this over, and then play, smarter. So the 30 minutes per player is actually a pretty accurate, statement, which is usually not the case. Yeah, I can't think of anything else about this game. If you're teetering on the edge, if anything I said, sounded great, then Gloomhaven is definitely worth every penny because, at price point, I think I got it off Kickstarter for a pretty good price, and I've for sure got my money's worth out of it. And really, whatever, even if you spent $200 on it, then there's 95 scenarios, and if you get the solo ones, I think that's another 10 or something. And they take about an hour. That's 95 hours of gaming, and if you're into this hobby at all, you probably won't even finish it, because everyone just has an addiction, and we just keep buying. But on a scale of 1 to 10, yeah, it's a 10. I give it a 10. It is. Now I know I obviously had some complaints about it, but none of them I actually really care about. I'm having a blast. Even all the the rules mistakes and stuff that I keep forgetting. Everyone who's watching the series seems to not, they don't seem to care a lot, but they're willing to help me. And if I take the time to learn that, then take their advice and look at their rule clarifications and work to make that, then it's not a problem. My condition problem was I didn't even care. I got over it. I'm like, yeah, okay, I wish it wasn't like that, but it works. Like, it's not like, oh my god, you're not poisoned all the time. You're not, you know, immobilized all the time. It comes up every once in a while, and so it's not like you're not out of the game. You're not out of the scenario whenever it happens. So you have to think and work with that. That's, yeah, it's a 10 out of 10 for me. I highly recommend Gloomhaven. So go out and get it, and stick around for, stick around for the series, because it's gonna keep coming, and I hope you guys enjoyed with the videos so far. And that's it. So like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you. Hey everyone, thank you for watching, and I really hope that you enjoyed the video. If you want to support us, you can go ahead and click that link to go to my Patreon account. If you have any suggestions, you can go ahead and click the link in the show notes below to go to my Board Game Geek list. Other than that, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you.